Massachusetts in 1942. It's a long time ago. I still don't appreciate how long ago that was, because time warps as you get older. But when I was 10, my parents decided in I think the end of 51, to pack us up. They sold a house they built and put all the money in one check, which we got to hold and look at, a $10,000 check. It was the most money we could ever imagine. And anyway, they bought a Woody, a 1950, I think it was a 50 Woody Ford station wagon, and a Spartan trailer, 27-foot trailer. Put everything in it, including 4 kids at that time. And we headed west, and we had no idea what the West was, except from what we'd seen on television. And we started out, and there's a lot of stories there, but basically we made it to California, and Dad was thinking of going to Oregon, but we wound up staying in California because there was work there. I remember my mother becoming religious at the time. She was her sister had talked her into going to the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and after a while she embraced it more and tried to encourage us kids, and my dad, who would not buy into it but was supportive, all of us to go to church with her, and we did, and it was a pretty boring experience most of the time. And I started in church actually drawing on the side of the church, anything that had any open space on it. I started drawing pictures, and then my mother started saving those, and I remember looking back, and I still have some, and that's when I sort of realized that I could actually render and do some drawing. I think that's when I realized that I actually had a skill to do something. And then in 4th grade, I had a teacher who was really exceptional. She didn't teach me a lot of other things, but she taught me one thing, that I could do things, and I could do some things well. It was really a great realization. And so from there, I think I was sort of locked into the path of being able to participate in the art world, although I did a lot of other things. And we were really restless kids. My older brother and I would play and explore constantly, and we did it physically. We didn't sit and read too much, except for what we needed to know to learn how to make gunpowder or to melt lead on my mother's stove in the kitchen. And she would let us. My mother was actually one of the kids. She loved the process of having kids and rearing kids and doing things together, and we did a lot. And we got her in trouble sometimes, like when the lead blew up from pouring it into a wet mold.
Just look at this mess!
We had to scrape it off the ceiling before Dad got home and found out what we had done. When I was a teenager, I was pretty restless, and school, day-to-day school and on to college was really tough for me. And I wound up going to junior college and learning about some of the classics and about the humanities. Anyway, I've been able to spend the rest of my life looking into those things. So I got drafted into the Army during the Vietnam War, and I didn't want to kill anybody. So I went in, I got the draft notice and went down to the draft board, and I said, I don't want to kill anybody, but I'm glad to give you some time. I wound up being in the artillery and working in radar and going to electronics school in San Francisco, and they said you'd go from there for half your hitch, and then for the rest of it you'd go to either Alaska or to Germany. And so I wound up in Alaska. So then I got out of the service and found a job as an illustrator for a company, Frieden, a corporation that made adding machines. And after about 6 months or so, I found a camera in a closet, and I said, why can't we just photograph these things rather than have to draw exploded isometric views of these machines? which we'd spend a week doing a drawing like those in ink so they could be photographed. So I started doing that and got myself in this little studio incorporated into the photo lab, which was a great opportunity for learning because we did everything in the photo lab from make prototype circuit boards from positives, and we made printing plates, we made movies, we did lots of graphic arts work, and besides documenting processes and working on books and stuff. So it was great. But then the next thing that happened was that they wanted to put me into management. That was sort of the next step. You worked for a year or 2 years or 3 years as a technician, and then the next step was to sit in the desk and run the operation. And I didn't think that was going to be for me. So I quit. I think that was 1970, 71, and I have worked for myself ever since. So in 71, moved to Vancouver, lived there for 7 years and opened a gallery, a photography gallery, and one of the first photography galleries on the West Coast. And I realized shortly that I hated retail life, sitting there. And then I started with some friends, an organization called Vancouver Image Exploration Workshops, and we got some grants to do some projects, did shows, and got sort of moved more into the art world, or art photography world. But I was starting to do commercial photography at the time and just kind of learning on my own how to do things. But the most fun thing we did with View was that we decided, we were sitting around one evening, drinking beer, I guess, and talking about photography and photographers, and thought, why wouldn't it be wonderful to talk to Cartier-Bresson or W. Gene Smith or Ralph Gibson or some of the people that we thought were just doing hot work at the time. And I think I remember saying, let's just call them up and see if we can get them out. So we did. We made a few phone calls and realized that, well, we could pay these guys and they'd come. Guys and some women, Judy Dater. Anyway, we went with an idea. We developed the idea a little bit and decided we'd do some workshops and a lecture, a big lecture, and we'd charge for them. And we thought we could break even or make a little money doing it. So we went to the, it wasn't the Canada Council for the Arts, it was the British Columbia Council for the Arts, or the big arts organization in British Columbia. So we went over to Victoria. I was the president of View, and Jerry was this secretary, and we went over and we presented our idea to this panel in this big room at the Empress Hotel. And they gave us a check for like $5,000 for seed money. This is back in 1972 or something. And we started off doing it. We did this series for 2 or 3 years. And the Henry Gallery here in Seattle picked it up. So we would do the series in Vancouver, and then we'd bring them down, whoever the lecturer was, we'd bring them down to Seattle. And it was great fun. We met really interesting people. While I was in Canada, I lived there for 7 years, I worked really hard doing photography, commercial photography, and I began teaching at the University of British Columbia as a guest lecturer and as doing adult education, and taught at the art school and did projects across Canada. So it was a great experience relative to the art world. But we were restless, lived in the city up there, and we're starting to look for some land or something close to the city of Vancouver. And it was really difficult to find anything that was affordable. And we were on vacation down on Bainbridge Island in Seattle, because we came down to Seattle a lot, and we were still American citizens. So we ran into Bainbridge and really liked it, and decided we were going to just settle here. And we did. We just bought some few acres of land here and built a house. And then decided I really wanted to build furniture, make some furniture. So I opened up a cabinet shop and had 2 or 3 people working for me. And the cabinet shop actually was one of the beginnings of the gallery that eventually wound up being in the same building. I sort of worked the regular cabinet shop for, it was almost 15 years, and built a lot of furniture. In fact, the last job we did in the shop before I left there was to build the front doors for Bill Gates' house. And but we did a lot of fun things, but we also did a lot of boring things. Casework, shelves, sprayed a lot of lacquer, which we probably shouldn't have done. I got back into photography by starting to do architectural work. Got hooked up with Jim Cutler, who really gave me a start doing that, and then I worked for a lot of other architects too. But I moved out of the cabinet work, and I remodeled it with what money we had and friends, and we started having a few shows, and they were shows mostly for us and for our friends because we were out in the woods. Even some of the people that worked in the cabinet shop who had talked about doing artwork or had gone to art school but never could get started doing anything else wound up having shows at the gallery there later on. And for me it was like this wonderful circle of friends that we were doing things, and we were doing them for the sake of doing them, not for the sake of making a living or making money off of it. It wasn't part of the issue. I'm semi-retired now. Getting back to your work, it's difficult to turn and go back to all of the interesting strains of work you were doing before, because life is different, and you change in your ideas, and you learn more, fortunately, if you can remember it. But one of the things I want to explore more, which is very interesting to me, is sort of the dangers of beauty. I find that one of the things that I do automatically is always turn to beauty, what we conceive as beauty. We even define it very carefully. And it always takes us to the same place that we've been before. It's wonderful to appreciate, wonderful to look at things that are, quote, beautiful, but they are defined, and we always need to go to the edge of that and find out what else, where it can take us. If you learn how to define beauty and you learn how to make beautiful things, then you're a bit stuck because you're not inventing anymore. So one of the things I would like to do is explore this idea of how beauty can misinform us, how it can take us on a short ride and maybe not very far. So one of the things I would like to do is sort of explore that contradiction between beauty in art and to be an inventor.